There comes a moment when the silence speaks louder than the scream, when the people you trusted the most are the ones who taught you the sharpest kind of silence, the kind that doesn't echo, doesn't explain, doesn't apologize. Betrayal isn't just an action, it's an unraveling, quiet, precise, personal. It doesn't knock, it slides in, wearing the face of someone you loved. And when it's done, when the dust settles, when the truth stands naked in the room, you're left holding 1,000 questions and not a single answer. What did I do wrong? Why didn't I see it coming? How could they? But this isn't the part where you stay broken. This is the part where you rise. Not with fury, not with vengeance, but with something far more terrifying to the betrayer: grace. Because there is a way to move on after betrayal. And it doesn't begin with them. It begins with you. Betrayal is a mirror, not a verdict. When betrayal first strikes, the instinct is to ask what it says about them, their lies, their disloyalty, their choices. But in truth, the first lesson of betrayal is not about the other person at all. It's about you. What you see in the wake of it all is not a verdict on your worth, but a mirror held up to your heart. It reveals your capacity for trust, for loyalty, for belief. And yes, that hurts, because in a world full of people who wear masks, you dared to be genuine. There is something strangely poetic about the way betrayal operates. It doesn't explode. It peels. It strips layers from your perception until the truth stands bare and cold. And in that moment, many will tell you to harden, to stop trusting, to become as calculated as the ones who wronged you. But there is another path, a quieter one that doesn't demand you change who you are, but deepens your understanding of who you've always been. You see, betrayal is never about proving that you were foolish. It's proof that you were faithful in a world that feeds off convenience. It's proof that your heart still held innocence in a time when everyone else had already traded theirs for control. The pain you feel isn't weakness. It's a consequence of strength misused against you. You gave what others couldn't: truth, effort, belief. And they broke it. Not because it was worthless, but because they didn't know how to hold something that real. So don't let it poison you. Let it refine you. Let the mirror show you your depth. Look into the reflection and say, I gave something pure. They weren't ready. That's not a failure of my soul. That's a lesson in theirs. You don't walk away from betrayal diminished. You walk away reintroduced to yourself, sharper, wiser, clearer. You learn who truly stands with you, and more importantly, who you are when everyone else walks away. And in that knowledge is power. Not loud, angry power, but something deeper. The kind of power that cannot be shaken again. Because once you've seen your own reflection in betrayal's mirror, you can never again be fooled by a mask. Let them keep the knife, you keep your peace. There is a moment after betrayal when you stand at a dangerous crossroads. One path is rage, the desire to strike back, to make them feel what you felt, to balance the scales through retaliation. And the other? The quieter path, the harder path. The path where you do something far more courageous. You let go. It's tempting, isn't it, to gather the shattered pieces of what was once trust and hurl them back in fury, to rehearse the speech you'll never deliver, to wait for the chance to prove you were right, to make them regret ever crossing you. But here's the brutal truth. Holding on to the blade only keeps the wound open. The more you grip it, the deeper it cuts. And after a while, you're not bleeding because of what they did. You're bleeding because you won't let go. So let them keep the knife. Let them carry the weight of what they've done. That burden doesn't belong to you. Your job is not to punish. Your job is to preserve what they tried to destroy. Your peace, your sanity, your sense of self. You see, peace is not passive. It's not weakness. It's not surrender. It's one of the fiercest forms of power. Because when you walk away without needing revenge, without needing closure from them, you're telling the universe something louder than rage ever could. That you know your worth, and no one gets to drag you into the mud they live in. Forgiveness, contrary to popular belief, is not about pretending it didn't happen. It's not about welcoming them back or excusing the pain. It's about choosing not to let that moment define every moment after it. It's about refusing to let bitterness rent space in a soul that was built for better things. When you forgive, you're not setting them free. There is an elegance in restraint. There's dignity in silence. Not the silence of weakness, but the silence that comes from knowing you have nothing to prove. People who hurt others expect chaos in return. They expect to see the fire in your eyes, the fury in your voice. But when you choose stillness instead, when you choose to walk away clean, untouched by their poison, they're left with nothing but the echo of their own actions. And in time, the truth has a way of unraveling on its own. It always does. Lies crumble, masks fall, and the very people who once thought they got away with everything will one day look around and realize they have no one left to fool. But by then you'll be gone, far from the noise, far from the wound, building something they can never touch, because you chose to move on with grace. So let them keep the knife. You've got something far more valuable now. You've got peace, and that is unshakable. Closure is an inside job. We're taught to chase closure like it's a door someone else is supposed to open for us. We sit in silence, replaying every conversation, analyzing every glance, waiting for an answer that will finally make the pain make sense. We want them to return, not necessarily to stay, but to explain, to admit, to confess, to look us in the eye and say, yes, I did it, and I'm sorry. But often, that moment never comes, and the longer we wait, the more imprisoned we become by a truth that was never ours to carry. Because the hard truth is this: closure doesn't come from their apology. It doesn't come from the conversation you never had. It doesn't come from their sudden realization of what they did or who you were to them. Closure isn't delivered, it's created, inside you, in the quiet hours when you finally understand that peace cannot depend on someone else's guilt. You may never get the reason. You may never understand why they changed, why they lied, why they walked away so easily while you were still holding on with everything you had. And that's where the work begins. Not in solving the riddle of their betrayal, but in forgiving yourself for trusting someone who didn't know how to be true. We tend to think closure is about understanding what went wrong, but more often it's about accepting what never was right. Not everyone who says they love you means it. Not everyone who promises to stay knows how to hold that promise. And sometimes the truth is not hidden, it's just inconvenient. We don't want to see it because the fantasy felt safer than the reality ever did. But here's what real closure looks like. Waking up one day and choosing not to look back. Choosing not to answer the call. Choosing to delete the message, not out of spite, but because you know you're no longer the same person who needed it. Closure is when the same memories that once broke you now pass through your mind without shaking the walls of your soul. It's when you stop needing to explain yourself, when you stop defending your pain or justifying your silence. It's when you understand that they don't need to see your scars to validate your healing. You know what you went through. You know what it cost you. and you know what it took to still stand. Real closure is quiet. It doesn't arrive with dramatic endings or perfect last words. It's not wrapped in apologies or dripping with regret. It's found in your decision to no longer let that person or that moment narrate the rest of your story. It's in your ability to say, that chapter is closed, not because they ended it right, but because I choose to turn the page. And when you make that choice, something beautiful happens. The power you once gave to someone else, the power to hurt you, to validate you, to free you, returns to where it belongs. With you. So stop waiting for them to make it right. They won't. They can't. But you can. Because closure was never about them. It was always about you. Grieve the fantasy, not the person. One of the hardest things to accept after betrayal is that the pain you carry isn't always about the person who hurt you. It's about the version of them you believed in. It's about the future you built with them in your mind, the late-night conversations, the silent promises, the feeling of safety, of permanence, of trust. When betrayal strikes, it doesn't just destroy a relationship, it shatters an illusion, and what you're grieving often is the dream. There's a reason your mind keeps circling back to the memories, the good moments, the way things used to be. Because deep down, you wanted it to stay that way. You weren't just attached to the person, they changed. You were attached to the version of them you thought was real. The version that smiled, supported you, stood by you. But that version, if we're being honest, may never have truly existed, or at least it only existed in fragments. Just enough to keep you invested, just enough to keep you hoping. That's what betrayal truly takes. It robs you of certainty, it leaves you wondering what was genuine and what was performance. And that uncertainty can be maddening, but healing begins when you allow yourself to mourn. Not just what happened, but what didn't. The words they never said, the loyalty they never gave, the future that now lives only in your imagination. Let yourself grieve that. It matters. Because when you deny that grief, you stay stuck trying to get back to something that was never fully real. And you can't heal while holding on to a ghost. There is a deep kind of sorrow that comes with accepting the truth, that no matter how much love you offered, how much grace you gave, how much potential you saw, they still chose to walk away. Or worse, they stayed and harmed you from the inside. That truth feels cruel, but it is also freeing, because it allows you to stop chasing answers. It allows you to stop blaming yourself for their inability to love you the way you deserved. You were not naive for believing in someone. You were not weak for hoping. That hope, that capacity for belief, is something sacred. It shows the size of your heart, not the limits of your judgment. But now, with eyes wide open, you can take that same heart and guard it with wisdom. Not bitterness, not walls, just clarity. You are allowed to miss someone who hurt you. You are allowed to cry for something that's gone. Healing doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you learn how to feel everything without being consumed by it. It means you stop asking why they did it and start asking what you need now. So let yourself grieve the fantasy. Let yourself weep for the imagined future, for the promises unkept, for the version of them that lived only in your trust. That grief is part of the process. That grief is honest. And when it passes, because it will, you'll find yourself standing in reality, not the one you dreamed of, but the one that finally lets you breathe. No more illusions, no more lies. Just you, real, whole, and no longer looking back. Because now you're not chasing the fantasy anymore. You're choosing truth. become what they could never be. There is a moment after betrayal has burned through the illusions, when you're left with only one thing, the choice of who you will become because of it. You've seen their true colors. You've felt the sting of deception, the weight of silence, the ache of being discarded or misunderstood. You've walked through the fire, and no one handed you a map. No one explained why the people you held up so high could sink so low. But here you are, still breathing, not because it didn't hurt, but because something in you refused to die where they left you. And now the question isn't about what they did. That story has already been told. It's finished. The real question is what you'll write next. This is where evolution begins. Not revenge, not vindication, not desperate attempts to prove your worth to those who never deserved to witness it in the first place. Evolution, quiet, subtle, unspoken. You see, the ones who betray you, they expect you to fall apart. They expect bitterness to take root. They expect you to become a mirror of them, cold, guarded, cynical. That's how they justify what they did. If you become like them, then they never have to confront what they destroyed. But when you rise in the opposite direction, when you choose character over cruelty, integrity over impulse, strength over spite, you leave them with nothing but the weight of their own reflection. They took a good thing for granted. Let that be their memory, not your identity. You don't need to announce your comeback. You don't need to explain your silence. When your light is real, it speaks for itself. Your healing becomes your protest. Your peace becomes your shield. And your success? That becomes the most deafening silence of all. But make no mistake, this transformation doesn't come easy. You will be tempted to shrink, to give up, to say, "What's the point in being good when it led to this?" But that thought is a trap. The pain they caused is a test, not a verdict. And this is where you decide, do you let it define you, or do you use it to refine you? They were dishonest, so you become more truthful. They were selfish, so you become more generous. They were chaotic, so you become still. That's the paradox. That's the power. You become the very thing they lacked the courage to be. And while you're doing this, while you're healing, building, rising, don't worry if they seem unbothered. That's not your business anymore. Some people live their whole lives untouched by the damage they cause. But even if they never regret it, even if they laugh like nothing happened, the universe keeps a perfect balance. Life has a way of circling back, and when it does, you won't be there to see it. Not because you don't care, but because you've outgrown the need to watch. By then, your life will be too full of truth, too full of purpose, to look back at a chapter that no longer fits the story. There's also something else to remember. Becoming what they could never be doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means becoming authentic. It means facing your pain, not hiding from it. It means owning your story without shame. You may stumble. You may have days where the memory sneaks in and wraps itself around your chest. That's okay. You're not weak. You're healing. Healing is not a straight line. Some days you'll feel invincible. Other days you'll feel cracked open again. But with each step forward, you're shedding the skin of who they thought you were and stepping into who you were always meant to be. You were loyal, you were real, you gave love that had no conditions. That's not something to regret, that's something to honor. Because if you can be that kind of person in a world that rewards betrayal and self-interest, then you are rare, you are powerful, you are necessary. And the world doesn't need more people who get even. It needs more people who get wiser. So let your growth be your answer. Let your calm be your strength. Let your future be the response they never saw coming. Become the kind of person who walks into a room and doesn't need to say a word, because your energy already speaks of battles survived, of lessons learned, of a spirit that refused to break. Let your presence tell the story of how betrayal could not bend you into bitterness, but instead shaped you into grace with edges. They may never understand what they lost. That's not your responsibility. Your only task now is to build the kind of life that reflects who you truly are, not who they convinced you to be. And when you do that, when you become what they could never be, you won't need closure. You won't need revenge. You'll have something far more powerful. You'll have freedom.